So, first off, Milo, I want to know a little bit about your background. So, do you remember when you heard metal music for the first time?
When I heard metal music?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was 14, and it was my first day of high school. I was 14, like I said, and my desk mate was sitting beside me, was a metalhead, and introduced me to Metallica, specifically the album Kill 'Em All, and you know that's how it started. And then from there it progressed by meeting other friends that were into even more modern kind of metal, like Korn, Slipknot, Cold Chamber, Static X, and later on Fear Factory, of course. And so that's my introduction to metal in a nutshell. So.
Okay, so you first started as a drummer, but then you became a vocalist. So how did that transition happen for you?
Well, you know, I never stopped being a drummer, and I'm still a drummer. Yeah. But of course, singing Fear Factory means I'm doing this full time, so I have to dedicate the majority of my time to singing. But yeah, I started off as a drummer when I was 12. I would say having both my parents being professional musicians helped in conveying this huge passion for not just for music but for working with music. And so as I started, banging on desks at school when I was 12, I knew right away I wanted to be a musician and make a living out of it. So yeah, having discovered this natural rhythmic skill, made me passionate about percussions, drums and percussions. So I studied everything from ethnic Latin percussions, Afro-Cuban percussions, to modern drum set, rock drum set, metal drum later on, and so I had a few lessons. I studied a few years in Rome, conservatory in Rome, classic percussions, and but I was also a lot passionate about electronic music, and I started. I think it started the year before when I was 11. Just my dad, as I said, is a musician, and he had a studio, and he had this Fruity Loop software on his computer, and I was starting just to mess with it, and and I was 11 back then, and I didn't start play yet, and that was the moment where I started developing this passion specifically for electronic music. So being electronic music producer and a musician just kind of went together in a parallel, and so I was, as I grew older, I was into both percussion, drums, percussions, and live electronic music. So I bought a lot of synthesizer. I started studying scratching on the turntables, all that kind of stuff. And so that was a music heritage for sure. And but then singing came a little bit later when I was 19, and that's because my passion for metal, and I thought that at that time I was going through some teenage dramas, of course, and I thought that metal could help me to go through it, not just playing it as a drummer or whatever, but singing, starting to write lyrics and learning how to scream. And I felt like that would be so therapeutic for me, and it was. So singing for me started pretty much as a therapy first. It wasn't even as much as a passion as it is nowadays. Then it became a passion, but first it was more like a therapy. The first time I was with the mic, being the front guy, I was like, what the fuck am I doing here? It was weird, because I was always used to be back as a drummer or percussionist, whatever. And so it was weird, but I needed it, you know, to vent some shit and get some shit out of my system, and yeah, it was pretty much born as a therapy, and fast forward years and years later, here we are. So.
So when it comes to screaming, what kind of like early memories do you have when it comes to screaming, and were you sort of first mimicking your influences before you developed your own voice, or how did your like vocal evolution happen?
Well, you asked about first bands that inspired me to scream. Is that the question?
Yeah. That how did you learn to scream, and did it take like long time? Were you losing your voice in the beginning and?
So of course back then we had no. I mean, yeah, YouTube was barely starting, but we didn't have so much content about, you know, screaming tutorials and stuff like that. So I tried to figure it out myself. We're talking about 2006, 2007. And yeah, I tried myself, you know, I fucked up a lot of times, you know, at first, you know, you feel sore, you know, and you lose your voice, you know, that's normal when you try to figure it out yourself. And, but I would say I first started because of Des from Cold Chamber, you know, that's my very first huge vocal inspiration, and Corey from Slipknot. But specifically, you know, I was really fascinated by Des' tone on the first two Devil Driver albums and all Cold Chamber albums. That kind of grunty growl and high scream. You know, he had both tones, and I was so fascinated by it.
Were you sort of like first copying him before you developed your own voice, or
Yeah.
how did that happen for you?
Yeah, I was pretty much trying to nailing his tone, and that helped me a lot, specifically with the high scream. You know, both, but especially high screams, you know, like death metal high screams. When I do high screams, you know, all I think is Death's high scream. You know, yeah. So. But then, of course, it progressed more. You know, I was introduced to more and more bands, and all those singers from those bands were a huge inspiration for me, like Johnny from Spineshank, of course, as I mentioned, Corey from Slipknot, you know, even earlier, John from Korn, Chad from Mudvayne, of course, Wayne from Static X, and later on Fear Factory. And when I discovered Fear Factory, and specifically when I saw them live for the first time in 2010, which was, I came late, you know, because I knew Fear Factory were like a 90s band. But when I discovered them and saw them live, I was like, wow, you know, I want to be this guy, you know, it's hilarious. But, and when I discovered Bert and Fear Factory, that became my probably my most predominant vocal influence together with Des. So I would say Des and Bert were my, like, top vocal influence as far as screaming goes, and Bert as far as clean vocal goes as well. Yeah, I really loved his tone, and so yeah, from that moment on, I started to be even more influenced by Bert's style in both screaming and clean vocals. But while I was doing my own thing in my band DeadChannel, you know, my vocals was clearly, if you hear it, you can clearly hear all those influence. You know, Spineshank, Cold Chamber, Fear Factory, Slipknot, so on and so on, Static X. But of course, when I was contacted by Dino for Fear Factory, which of course, needless to say, was mind blowing. Of course, I had to go back and restudying some of the Bird style, which I already had, but I had to nail it even more. Like, you know, I had to sound as Fear Factory as possible.
So when you are now performing those like Bird songs live, do you want them to sound like as Bird as possible, or do you want to make them sound like you more?
Well, yeah, I mean, and not because, like, a lot of people, not a lot of people, some people, either in a good way or in a bad way, they're saying it sounds like a Bird copy, and I'm really happy for that because it's not about copying Bird. It's about you're singing with for a band that's been so influential for metal. It's an iconic band. You don't really want to change the sound. Like Bird's an iconic singer. And he did so much for the band, and his vocal sound, it's so important. And I think, and Dino, both me and Dino think that you really want to nail the vocal style, and I think that's the reason why he was so interested by my covers in the first place, because I'm not the best singer in the world by any means, but I think what got me the gig is the fact that I was so obsessed with his style that I studied it so much. I was trying to replicate even the slight nuances, like the slight off-key notes on a record, that made his style unique, and so yeah. To answer your question, I try to sound as Bird, but I would say as Fear Factory as possible, because Bird vocals is one of those aspects that made Fear Factory sound. So I want to sound as Fear Factory vocals as possible. So yeah, as Bird as possible, but that's because.
So do you have like a specific warm-up routine that you follow before the show? Do you warm up your voice, and are there like some specific foods or drinks that you try to avoid before the show that you have felt that they harm you somehow, or on the opposite side, something that helps you?
Oh, well, as far as food goes, I mean, I've heard of a lot of things that people say, avoid fruits, avoid acid things, but I think, well, first of all, I tend not to eat before the show. Like, I just have lunch as a wake up, so at 2, 3, because that's the time I wake up during tour, and I eat. I tried not to eat a lot because when I did, it was bloated even at the show, even without dinner. So I tried to eat like a normal meal and try to eat a lot of veggies and some protein. We had a lot of protein shake on tour. And but yeah, I tried to have like 4/even 5 hours after having lunch without eating. So then I go on stage and then I eat after our show. And yeah, I mean, I would say beside alcohol, which is not that great. I'm not a huge alcohol person myself, but I like sometimes, rarely, like just to hang out with people, to drink a little bit, just sip it. I like to sip like good quality alcohol. Like we have a lot of good Italian liquor or red wine, so I like to sip a little bit of it. But on tour, I try not to do that, or do it as least as possible. And of course, I try not to do it before going on stage, because it's going to trigger your acid reflux, and of course, it's not good for your vocal cords. For what concerns, you said vocal warm-up?
Yeah. Do you have a specific one?
Yeah, of course. My huge luck is, like I said, both my parents are professional musicians, and specifically my mom is a singer and singing teacher for a living, and so of course she taught me a lot of good warm-up routine. And I noticed that, it's really subjective. Like I've heard a lot of like professional singers of huge bands not doing warm up at all. Some of them do like 30 minutes warm up.
This is a question where everybody answers differently.
Yeah, right. So yeah, it's really subjective, because I think each one of us has got different body. When you're talking about a singer, you're talking about playing your body. Your body's your own instrument. So everybody's body is different. So I think you should probably find what best works for yourself. And for me personally, I think that like 10 to say maximum 15 minutes warm up works fine. I start with a lot of breathing exercises. So I try to expand my diaphragm. I even massage my diaphragm, because when you sing metal, especially like Fear Factory, has a lot of Bird has a lot of chopping technique. yeah, what's it? I F B go A, and you have a lot of short. Sometimes you have short periods of time where you can take breath.
Yeah.
So that creates like contraction in your diaphragm. That's normal, you know. My brother is a physical therapy, and he always told me it's normal for singers to have contracted diaphragm. So you want to massage it a little bit and do a lot of breathing exercises to stretch it out a little bit. So I do that. I find on the internet it's really useful. Like you breathe for like let's say 4 seconds, you hold your breath for 2 seconds, then you breathe out for 4 seconds and you hold for 2 seconds, and then you keep doing more and more. So like 6, 3, 6, 3, 7, 3.5, 7, 3.5, so on and so on.
Do you have like a specific way to hold the microphone? Does it help you with the singing if you hold it like certain way?
Well, I would say I usually hold the mic like this. Sometimes I like to cup it a little bit, not extremely cup it, but
a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes you create a nice flavor to it. Even sometimes it's just one hand cup, sometimes it's two hands when you want to emphasize a part. Like for instance, when you're singing live, a lot of low notes get lost, like because especially like in a very low register, you cannot push them as much as higher notes. So yeah, you can play with the distance. But what I like to do better, it's like copying more when I'm singing lower notes, like I will be the power surge, for instance, you know.
Okay.
It depends, of course, for the circumstance, but yeah, sometimes I find it useful. And for screams too, like when you want to deliver like powerful, high death metal screams, yeah, sometimes it had some kind of filtered mid-rangey flavor to it. So yeah, but my regular mic grip is this. So I try not to cup the capsule as much, but yeah. So
okay, I have few questions left, and the second last one actually goes that what were like your parents' reactions when they heard you screaming your lungs out for the first time?
You mean before Fear Factory, like?
Yeah, before even like when they heard you for the first time screaming your lungs out, were they like immediately supportive against like for you?
Well, they were like, "The fuck are you doing?"
The typical one.
Yeah, they were like, "Oh, vale retro satana." No, it was like, what are you doing? What is this band doing? Just screaming. What the fuck is that? They're musician, blah blah, but they're really from that 70s rock blues generation, and yeah, sure, they like as younger, when we were younger, they liked a lot of Led Zeppelin, a lot of the Who, all those the Beatles, a lot of historical rock bands, but Slipknot's too much. It's like, what the fuck is this noise? Why is this guy throwing up on the mic? So at first they wouldn't come in, they wouldn't understand it quickly. But I think that later on I guess they got kinda used to it. Just like, oh, please don't play that music on the radio. While I was driving my car, I would play metal. While I was having them in my car, they were like, "Yeah, please turn it off." And I'm like, "Why? It's so good. It's groovy." and they were like, "Oh, please, it's making me anxious. Turn it off, please." We would argue for that, And but then it's funny that to think that right now, since I got the gig with Fear Factory, they're so happy, enthusiastic about this huge opportunity of my life, having their son fulfilling it's his bigger dream. Then it somehow made them appreciate at least not all metal, but Fear Factory music. Like now my mom is like, "My favorite song is Shock," and I'm like, "What?" It's a heavy song,
but they still hate Slipknot.
I mean, I don't know, but that probably it helped us. It helped them to open their mind to heavier sound in general. They don't listen to metal, but you know, it's I think it's just it's still a very good thing, and it's funny when you think about it, you know. So and they attended concerts. You know, I gave earplugs. I gave both of them earplugs. My dad has attended some shows. My mom's attended other shows, and so, well, my dad flew to Chicago actually. He's a bluesman, so he's like, you know, I have to go to Chicago. You know, a bluesman never saw Chicago. So and I played the House of Blues, and he had earplugs. Because I gave him earplugs. I knew they're not used to such high volume, you know. And they was like, you know what? I removed that, and it was bearable. It was even kind of, you know, it had emotional impact. You know, I never expected that witnessing metal concert live could have an emotional impact on me. You know, I was like, wow, you know, it's really cool. So.
Last question. Any kind of advice you would like to give to a young metal vocalist who is just about to start their journey? You're a good example that anything can happen.
Well, that was a huge, like we say in Italian, hit of luck. Like it was for sure. But of course, I think when luck comes to you, if you're prepared, I guess, you know, it helps. So I think that like I said before, the fact that I studied Fear Factory vocal style a lot helped me to get into gig. But yeah, of course, you have to help luck also. So I think the best advice, I think you mean in a way to succeed in music, right? Is that the question?
Or any kind of advice that you would like to give?
Well, of course, study, you know, every day. If you're singing, playing instruments, you know, whatever you like, you know. But that, I think that is pretty much comes natural, because if you like playing an instrument, you like singing it, studying it, whether it's like not, I don't just necessarily mean like studying solfeggio or like scales or studying in a technical approach. Study can be even like playing along your favorite records and trying to nail the tone, nail the performance as close as possible. And so I think that's the first advice I give for sure. Like, dedicate your own life to it. And to succeed in music, it's not easy. But if at the same time, I think if it's your like your number one expectation, you're like, I don't see myself doing anything else but this, then I would say, you know, just do it. There's no plan B. You know, like my dad always told me, even if he is a musician, you have to have a plan B, because music's so hard. It's a heavy path, you know. So you could end up not being able to sustain yourself economically with music. And I'm like, I don't want to have plan B, you know, just want to have music. So yeah, have a plan B, but at the same time not have too much of a plan B. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to do something and you really, you know, struggle and you fight to achieve it, you know, just do it, you know, whatever it takes. Like 10 years ago, I was throwing my demos for my band DeadChannel on Fear Factory stage. that's crazy.
And here
right?
you are today.
Yeah, you know, that wasn't what got me the gig, but still, you know, that's the level of.
Do you actually know if Dino picked it up then?
Yeah, because he was playing and he gave a look to the tech guy. I was like, take it when he was playing, you know, because he saw this unknown object flying on stage. I said, the fuck is this? Take it, you know. And,
okay.
But then that was 2010. 2 years later, I met Dino. We played in Rome, and we had pictures. You can find them on YouTube with both Dino and Bert. And I gave Dino that same demo. You know, like, finally, I can give you my own demo. You know, please, can you take it? Yeah, sure. And you know, but that was the level of desperation of a struggling local band of freaks of Rome, Italy. You know. So, but you know, that I think that's the right spirit, you know, and I did few crazy things like this, but still, not as much. Mine was more of a luck, I think. You know, like I studied a lot vocally and instrumentally, but to me, it was in my case was more like luck came to me, I would say, and I helped luck at the same time because I uploaded covers on YouTube. But what I would say is, as an ultimate advice, it's do anything in your own capabilities to reach your goal. You know, you want to be a fucking metal rock star, make a living out of it. Just fucking go for it. You know, just whatever it takes. You know. So because I think we have just this life, and we have to make the fucking best out of it. So just fucking keep doing what you want to do, and no plans B. You know. So.
Hey, thanks a lot for doing this.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.